Words and Behavior is an essay by the badass intellectual Aldous Huxley and was published in a collection of his essays entitled The Olive Tree in the year 1936 of our Lord. I know what you're thinking. What kind of a grown man writes essays? Smart ones do, that's who. A man who spawns from one of the most intellectual families in all of England. His grandpa was a scientist, and his other kin were educators and writers. Brave New World, one of the most highly regarded novels of the last century, had already been published. Aldous wasn't hurting for money, so he probably wrote Words and Behavior while touring Europe with his wife, who might have been considered hot back in those days. Huxley hung out with other well-known intellectuals, such as T.S. Eliot, who was so amazing he's considered both English and American. Virginia Woolf, who was so awesome she invented her own writing style called Stream of Consciousness, and D.H. Lawrence, who is one of the most controversial writers of all time. Huxley was so outstanding and regarded for his brain, he even tutored one Mr. George Orwell. Maybe you've heard of him. In Words and Behaviors, Huxley explains the importance of words, how words separate humans from other animals. He uses the analogy of two cats who cross paths and growl at each other, then leave without incident. But the human animal has the word enemy in his head, which enables him to hold on to the idea that another person can remain an enemy for an extended time, whereas the cat probably forgets real quick. According to Huxley, words used incorrectly lead to incorrect thinking. The effects can be devastating. Take war, for instance. War is a violent, life-altering activity, but governments manipulate the language of war to alter the way the citizenry thinks about it. Rather than using words like soldiers, governments used to rename military units by calling them rifles or sabers. Huxley calls this ironmongery. This excuses the listener from contemplating the fact that soldiers are excused murderers, cold-blooded killers. A nation's enemies are renamed as well, so that sympathy can be avoided. They aren't people, they're simply evil. They aren't like us. They are foreign and distant and detached. Huxley spends a great deal of text explaining the paradox of war. Citizens have to be convinced that violence leads to peace. That, in order for two groups to coexist in a state of non-aggression, aggression must be the antecedent. Of course, any act of aggression invariably produces a winner and a loser. There is peace only until the loser of the previous aggression has prepared well enough to become a revolutionary or a new aggressor and turns the previous winner into the latest loser, and the cycle continues. Huxley stipulates that the cycle of violence can only be broken if people speak more truthfully and seek better means of resolving disputes rather than using thermite to serve their own selfish interests. Huxley refers to Percy Bysshe Shelley's poem Letter to Maria Gisborne, explaining that people lie to themselves so that they can use ignorance as an excuse for their stupidity. It is not until we are all honest in our communication with one another that true progress can be made. This is a lesson, although written over 80 years ago, that has yet to be implemented by a majority of powerful nations.